This is Inside the Heart of Change, brought to you by Accenture.
Let there be change.
Good to have you join us on Inside the Heart of Change. I'm your host, Sheetal. On this episode of Inside the Heart of Change, Transforming Future Talent in Mining and Metals, we're going to explore why the traditional recruitment pathways and strategies are no longer relevant and how best we can bring technology, innovation and sustainability together to build the right environment for the future workforce. Now, our expert panel today comprises three very accomplished people who, between them, possess decades of experience and a wealth of information regarding metals and mining in India. We have with us Mithilesh Kumar, Lead Associate Director, focusing on chemicals, mining, metals, pulp and paper, building materials as part of Accenture's Advanced Technology Centers in India. We also have Chandni Vazirani, Southeast Asia Market Unit Lead for Growth Markets. And we have with us Professor Rajeev Shekar, who is Director IIT ISM Dhanbad. Now, we're talking about mining and metals on this podcast. This is important because we don't always realize how crucial this industry is to growth. By that I mean the growth of industry and the overall growth of our, society. Mithilesh explains why mining and metals, while seemingly unseen, are central to the larger India growth story.
It's a very intriguing industry for all of us because it's a very basic extractive industry. If you think of mining and metal, this is a very, very core to human survival. Everything around you in your lives is having some element of the mining, right? The kind of mobile phones we are using, the laptops through which we are communicating has some element of metals. If the world has to really go towards the new ways of working, the electrical vehicles, if they at all have to really run on the road, you will require lots and lots of materials which go into making the batteries. If you really require your mobile phones to really work, you will require the elements which go into making your mobile phones and the ornaments and the jewelries which many of us are fond of. The gold, it also comes from mining, which a lot of us are a very proud part of it. And interestingly, as a matter of fact, it's an industry which is the backbone and a very primary indicator of everything around us in terms of economic progress and also the societal progress.
Now that helps us understand the importance of mining and metals better. If we were to look at the changes that an industry-wide transformation is creating on the talent side of things, until recently, most of those conversations about the future of mining and metals focused on advances in technology. But there are other factors also at play now. Chandni Vazirani explains these various factors that are driving change from a talent supply perspective.
Most of the mining companies are now putting tremendous focus on core technologies like the automation, pervasive networks, the ultra high band communication, because all of these are becoming so very important for the miners or the operators who are actually working in these mining giants. The ability to rethink your maintenance strategy is so very important. It's important, to make these technologies more inclusive and human, which means that, when we talk of a field inspector or an OEM operator who's working on, multiple equipments, the design and the user interface should be so intuitive for these, right? It is key for them because they are working on the ground. And, so simplicity here is the key. Another very important aspect is that mining still relies on knowledge, which is very, very institutional, right? And very local in nature. Right. So it's important for us to digitize these experiences to make that workforce much more inclusive and progressive. So the work of the Global Talent Innovation Initiative is to explore possibilities for potential future roles, how, we can start defining these extreme cases, which may have an overlap with these new scenarios for the future. So the future for most of the mining and metal companies will likely be shaped by some or the other combination, one on technology, two on environmental, social and governance, and of course, not to forget the geopolitical drivers, right? So these are going to be extremely important as we navigate through.
Mithilesh recommends a holistic point of view, one that addresses current perspectives, clears myths around the talent in mining and metals, and actions that can reshape perceptions on the ground. A more holistic and proactive approach, he insists, is the way to drive the future of mining.
If the world has to really survive with the aspirations I already talked about, it has to do the same mining it has done in the last 200 years, which means we need to think about mining in a very holistic perspective. And what it means for us, our mining companies have to really worry about their vision towards 000, which means, are we doing enough about not only keeping people safe, but at the same time, are we doing enough to ensure that if somebody is running into the site, he is going back without doing any damage to their well-being. So how do we create that sense of pride among the people, not only the people who are working, but also the people who are their families and the communities? That's one part of it. The second part of it relates to the reputation part of it. If you really look at the data, almost 5 to 7% of total carbon emission globally is contributed in one way or another by mining and metals companies, which are primarily extractive in nature. They need to give a very auditable proof about the kind of work they are doing, the kind of processes they apply, the methods of mining they have, so that the communities, the investors, people who give them financing, the banks and the governments who give them a lot of support to acquire land to go for new exploration, are comfortable with their record and have the confidence that this mining is not done only for extraction of minerals, but it is a job creation thing. How do we also ensure that in the whole process, we make our workforce and the people inclusive? By inclusive, I mean, how is it that we really induce more digitally native talent? Is it like, and pretty much in mining, again, the average workforce, that of course varies from geography to geography, but in some of the mature markets where dominance of mining exists, if you talk about Australia, if you talk about Africa, some of the markets in India, we pretty much see the speed at which the new people are joining the workforce is not the speed at which the knowledge workers are exiting. So it's all about how do we really smartly retain that knowledge, and people who are coming in, how do we create that sense of excitement?
In India, the face of mining is all set for a big change. Earlier, the mining in India was captured by your images from films like Kala Patthar, where you had a person with a cap lamp and a basket on the head going with a pick. And later on, they had automated the coal conveying system. Now, that has changed significantly. Technology has come in a very big way in mining. Right from when you're saying exploration to a mine plan. When you start mining, you have to make a mine plan which tells you, based on the geology, it tells where to mine, etc. And then based on that, operations, logistics, etc. are decided. Now, there are very powerful software that help you do mine planning, help you do logistics, etc. The other thing is, we have big mining machinery also coming in. Software and hardware that they like, sensors, IoT, machine learning, etc., is an important part of all branches of engineering in mining.
Right.
So I have a feeling that with the advent of technology, what will happen is many of these students, even if they don't join a mining company, they will work in developing technologies for mining. So they would be indirectly associated with the mining sector.
Emerging technologies, sustainability and geopolitical uncertainty are shaping future operating models for a traditional sector like mining and metals. So what are the most sought-after skill sets that would be needed to tackle new challenges? Chandni and Mithilesh offer interesting insights from an industry point of view, and Professor Rajeev Shekar explains the changes that are happening at the academic level in terms of the ideas as well as the processes when it comes to this all-important aspect.
Typically, our research outlines 9 profiles showcasing the breadth of the future skill sets. The industries we would typically need as we, succeed into the coming years. And many of these common skills are new capability priorities, for these industries. As I said, it's very mining focused, understanding the business of the miners, how their day-to-day operations are run, which brings in my first point of having the business awareness of, the dynamics impacting the business decisions and the focus. And simple things like the market intelligence, will be extremely important. The second aspect that I want to bring in is the understanding society or community interdependencies, at the site level, which is bringing into another concept of entrepreneurship. So that's the second aspect that we should keep in mind. The third that I would talk about is having composable architecture with data, platform, and solutions. And none of these can work without each other, right? So we may be having applications, technologies, but data is equally important to be making sure, we have that end-to-end visibility into, how the business is actually making their work on the ground happen. The fourth aspect that I want to call out is on artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, which is nothing but IoT, cloud, machine learning, which is going to be so very important, as we move into the new era of advanced technologies in areas like mining. And we have many already being deployed to be able to having the mines of the future and so on, right? The other aspect is also the cultural and the emotional intelligence, because we have to bear in mind that, these people who are running the business have been in these roles for very, very long years and, almost having spent a lifetime carrying out their job. So we have to be a little more cognizant of, these aspects which come in more from a human aspect, right? And of course, the creativity, the innovation, and keeping the users absolutely at the prime, having that kind of a mindset to be able to develop solutions is going to be absolutely important.
There are technologies around our size. In fact, the investment on technology in field of mining has really tilted more from the core of mining to exploration, geosciences, because pretty much the movement of Earth surface and beneath it is very subtle. So my response to your question, Sheetal, is it's very important for us to have top-notch ability on advanced analytics, Internet of Things, and pretty much your data. And for this to really work, you need a great thought-out way of operating the data, deriving insights on a cloud platform.
Right.
The second element of this is about having the cultural intelligence, which is also about understanding the context in which you operate. If you talk about some of the oldish geographies and regions like Africa, wherein it's still unionized, the old ways of working, resistance to change, right? So how do we deal with that kind of issue? Because pretty much the moment you bring in new technologies, as I said, like automation, robotics, it also comes with a notion of snatching the jobs away from people, which is not correct. So how do you have the administrative acumen to break these kind of misconceptions and create that level of emotional intelligence that, look, we are taking people away from harm's way and repurposing them in some of the supervisory roles wherein their job is to, make a sense of the reports, job is to make real-time decision making, right? And if you really combine some of these elements, these are around how do we ensure that sense of entrepreneurship, the ownership, the data-driven way of looking into it, and also how do you ensure that the decision-making, the visibility is shared across organization, right from people who are sitting in your remote operations center to the people who are there inside the caves and people who are there at the pit.
Now, domain knowledge has to be an important part of it, because if you don't know the domain knowledge, you can't really work on the software as effectively as you want.
Right.
Then you would want knowledge in important new technologies, AI, IoT, machine learning, sensors, and just a general idea of how to adopt them. Now, this part is not a major concern because students have already realized it. that a second degree would also help. So, for example, in IITs, we have a double major where you can get a second BTech degree after one extra year, or you can get an MTech degree in your same department or others. So consider a mining student who gets a second degree in computer science, mining plus electronics. Right. That should be an awesome combination. The other important aspect is what we are also trying to develop. See, engineering is very theoretical in the country. See, I have never worked outside. So I always say I talk about engineering, I never do engineering. Yeah. So what we are trying to do is, we are trying to develop a product development mindset among the students. When they are studying, let's say, Newton's first law, or when they are studying Maxwell's equation, their mind should think, what are the practical applications? And can I make something new out of it? So this aspect, and we are also trying to develop it through projects. So I think the industry has to start differentiating. What sort of people should be used in shop floors, in shifts? What type of students would be used for higher value jobs? And you define those higher value jobs properly. So these three aspects, knowledge, multiple skills, in terms of knowledge, product development skills, and job description that fits the qualifications of the candidate is very important.
Emerging technologies, perhaps more than anything else, are likely to shape the change in the next few decades in mining and metals. But which areas will they impact? What are the implications? Chandni believes we are now in the age of the fourth industrial revolution.
Let me start off with the fourth industrial revolution, right? So in the coming decades, technology will both significantly improve productivity and make realities of remote operations. And we have umpteen examples of how this is already being done. So I have seen a preview of how, sitting in a swanky office in Perth, in Australia, how the remote operations of a mine were managed from that remote location, right? And the mines are like thousands of miles away, but we are actually controlling those operations from within that building and being able to get the produce, right? So that's how important technology is going to play a role as we move forward. The second aspect that I want to bring about, as we have more and more operational technology, by operational technology, I mean the technology which is actually used in the applications which are used by the miners themselves, is very tightly integrated with IT. And hence, cybersecurity becomes an extreme threat, because then these applications get exposed, or an increasingly sophisticated actors can gain access to these applications through the company's IT network. They can infect critical equipment, which will result in real-time damage, in the sense that the operations could stop. There would be a big issue in terms of how the produce actually gets stopped. The entire operations could go to a standstill. So that is the second aspect that we need to be cognizant of. Technology will drive the innovation. We have to start thinking of newer ways and means, and making sure that we are including the environmental, social, and governance areas, finding alternative ways to, using cyanide to leach gold from an ore, for example, and identifying new ways to extract rare earth metals from recycled material, right? So how do we get technology to help the business with newer ways of running their processes and their businesses?
Mithilesh explains that mining as an industry needs to reinvent, even reimagine itself. Professor Shekar believes that emerging technology will transform the industry in fundamental ways, right from exploration to vehicle maintenance.
We'll have to look at it from the lens of how is it that we want technology to really help. Is the intended usage of technology only at about improving productivity of people, or is it also about creating opportunities for us to grow our businesses, right? As I said earlier, as a response to one of your first questions, the world really requires a lot of mining. And let me tell you, the cost of exploring has become enormously high. So it's a double whammy kind of situation, right? This is an era wherein mining has to reinvent itself, right? So it's about how is it that we think of emerging technologies which have the ability to recreate jobs, which has an ability to redefine jobs, and also which has an ability to put mining in a position of job creator. And as you rightly opened saying, it's all about not being resource producer, but how is it that we are thinking stewardship along the whole value chain, right?
Right.
And the moment you think stewardship, it also brings in an element of mining being a very, very process intensive, asset intensive industry. You are also talking about modernization of your very technology landscape, which means your operational technologies and mining, for that matter, mining companies work very heavily with a lot of earth moving equipments, a lot of OEMs, the vendors who supply their big, massive, giant like machines which are required to do mining. So it's about how is it that you create that layer of integration with your operational technologies, combining your enterprise technologies and create that sense of cohesiveness because you have to really act on data. And while doing so, you're also inherently creating a risk around cybersecurity, which was not envisaged till 10 years back because asset side technology was pretty much a guarded affair. So how do you really balance the need to democratize the use of data across your mining and metals operations and also respond to these threat actors is the key. How do we use these technologies for mining companies to drive the change, right? It's about being more data-driven. It's about really understanding for every day of production, every shift of production, what is the carbon which I have emitted so that you can report it back to your policymakers, the governments, the societies, the mine directors, and in fact, your own employees, right? So it's important that we use emerging technologies like blockchain, IT-OT convergence, robotics, AI to our advantage in mining.
And what you need is you need good exploration data. The whole idea is with limited drilling, can we actually get a detailed and accurate description of the subsurface? And this is where I believe machine learning, artificial intelligence would play a big role. In fact, that is what we are also focusing on here. With the advent of these technologies, the location would be more exactly pinpointed and the estimate of the reserves would also be more accurately pinpointed. Now, the problem is, you make a mine plan, it will tell you how you proceed. If your exploration is not proper, you start mining in a certain way. After a while, where you expect a coal seam, you get a non-coal seam. So that changes things. And this is where these mine planning softwares, they come in a big way. The other important aspect in mining is that the mining machinery used is extremely expensive. And you want to keep them operated, keep its availability and utilization to the maximum. Some of them are several tens of crores. So that is where cyber physical systems would come in. So if you have an expensive, let's say, dumper which takes coal, when you have a car, you said you service it 10,000 kilometers or 1 year, whichever is early. You can't do that. So you have sensors sensing important characteristics of the engine and other parts. Through IoT, they send data to the cloud, and in the cloud, you have machine learning algorithms which process the data and tell you, okay, the probability of this important part failing within this specified time is this many %. Then you can make a decision. And many of these cases, the machinery is imported. Essentially, exploration and mining would change completely with technology. It would help in making mining more efficient and increasing productivity at lower cost. And also it will make it safer.
Vision, innovation, drive, and progress. Find out what goes on inside the heart of change. Brought to you by Accenture.
What is the role of a high-tech leader? What are the skill sets that the employer should focus on developing among employees to fill the gap? Should mining companies redefine such a role entirely, building from the ground up? Chandni helps us understand what this might look like.
So, Yuri is an analytic and innovative individual with a background in statistics and a desire to build upon, and execute creative ideas. Her key activities really involve communication, collaboration, and research. Now, with the mining and the metals organizations continuing to develop digital technologies, SkyHive analysis suggests this role continues to be in a relatively high demand compared to supply. Given the difference that we have between the supply and demand, the employers should consider building this role from scratch, right? So alternatively, employers could look for skills or similarities between the roles and prospective employees, right? If they currently lack a data science qualification. So as I said before, the workers and even so the contractors may not be digitally native and fluent in adopting these digital tools. So we must ensure, or the employees must focus on smooth digital onboarding, virtual training experience. And of course, even for that, we can bring in metaverse, which can help us resolve these kinds of issues, of having training sessions for these skill sets or these employees. And another aspect to increase the exchange of information and skills is really by doing reverse mentoring, right? Where we have a new joiner fresh from the campus and, can teach their line supervisors, because this millennial kind of workforce comes in with, I would say, a very lazy kind of a mindset, which, they would have done some automation, come up with some tricks on reporting, on ways of, doing some kind of statistics or do-it-yourself applications, which would really be, innovative in a sense and, can help drive some of these aspects altogether.
Now that brings us to another imperative for the industry. Talent. All these changes inevitably lead to changes in the strategies that are required to engage with future talent. How will mining and metal companies manage talent or define career journeys for future employees? And what lessons can they draw from other industries?
Of course, mining and metal companies will need to engage much more young talent and look internally to develop these new capabilities. Right. So there has to be an amalgamation of, the technology and the functional knowledge, or acquiring the business know-how to be able to, deal with these kinds of scenarios as we move into the future. Right. There is also an opportunity to re-engage with, experienced and senior practitioners returning to the industries. As I said, it's going to be extremely important, as we see more and more clients wanting us to understand their business process and then kind of, coming up with solutions which are more aligned to their business problems, which at the end of the day will help them bring in efficiencies, improve productivity from their business standpoint. Of course, in this environment, we'll also have to see new talent management strategies which will be needed. So, of course, there are going to be a set of principles for the new talent architecture. We'll have to define career journeys for these set of employees who will originate from these industries. We'll have to extend beyond the traditional supply kind of a sources and draw parallels with the other industries, for example, oil and gas, which are pretty much similar to how a mining and metals industry client operates. So these are going to be extremely important and has to be thought through as we move into the future of this talent group.
If you really see, as the future of talent evolves, even the role definitions and the desired career journey in mining and metal will also change. I'm a mechanical engineer, by the way, myself, and I also studied metallurgical engineering. The kind of environment you used to expose yourself when you used to talk about the basic blast oxygen, furnace-based metal making is no more. And pretty much in 5 years' time from now, you will really see a very sophisticated, very congenial, very friendly way of steel making if electrical arc furnaces become a reality, and that's going to happen, right? So what mining and metal companies need to do is they have to really engage with young talent. And it's like really giving the confidence to those 20-year-old people. And we are talking about huge demographic advantage if you take a look at India as a market or also some of the emerging geographies. So it's about really how do you create that foundation about the new capabilities. And there is also an opportunity to re-engage with some of the senior folks, right? If you really see in mining, as I said, a lot of people are pretty much retired. They have huge process understanding. They have understanding about the nuances when it comes to mining because it's at the same time very tricky. So how do you ensure that the people who have had 3-4 decades of experience working in mining, they come back to the workforce, even in advisory capacities, in consulting capacities to really coach people? These strategies will require defining the new principle for talent architecture, what kind of role you are talking about, what kind of career journey you want them to undertake as they get 5 years, 10 years into their work life, and even at the school, what kind of curriculum will you really induce for them to not only become comfortable with the entire topic of mining, but also how do we start breaking the myth about the hazard element of mining and make this a matter of pride. How do we really introduce new employee value proposition, which really targets the aspirations and the priorities of people who are going to join us 5 or 10 years down the road?
Professor Shekar believes that upskilling employees with continuous learning is an idea mining and metal companies must embrace. He also wishes to see future talent develop an entrepreneurial mindset that seeks to innovate within the mining industry.
AT&T, remember we had all those, when we were talking about networks, it was based on hardware. Then they were looking after the networks for Apple, iPhones. So suddenly the requirement of network exploded. And then they shifted to a software-based networking. And then what I read was, since in that area technology was changing so fast, that they had a collaboration with companies such as Udemy, which provided micro-credentials. And hence, there was this process of continuous learning. And so whenever the new technology came, they did not have to go out and hire all the talent. They were developing their talents in-house. So this continuing education could be in the form of micro-credentials. Now, for example, in IIT, we are providing an executive MTech program. As far as the employees, at least in India, are concerned, they would like to do a program which gives, quote-unquote, a degree, a higher degree, which helps them get a job in the same company or outside a company. So, for example, we are launching an executive MTech program on specialized subjects, not on electrical, mechanical, such as geomatics or tunneling and underground space technologies used in hydropower, metros, etc. So this continuous learning aspect has to be there. See, we have to develop people with an entrepreneurial mindset. And when I'm saying entrepreneurial mindset, I'm not saying you have to start a company. It is a thought process. Or always thinking, can I improve on it? Can I think of something new? Can I want to inculcate the skill in the employee so that technology is good. And a simple thing is, which we missed is, remember initially vehicles, automobile combustion, vehicles with combustion engines and stick shift. And then came cruise control, then automatic, and now you have electric and autonomous. This has to start from college, obviously, but this mindset needs to be developed because in the face of rapidly changing technology, you need this skill set.
The discussion on future talent and skill sets is incomplete without discussing EVP, or Employee Value Proposition for Gen Z, the people who will run the world in the next few decades. Young people these days want to see how a company helps them grow as human beings, not just as professionals. So, as companies try to attract the best talent available, EVP gains quite a bit of currency. How will they be different from the traditional ones for the Gen Z from an industry perspective?
We've seen the entire workforce change, from a generation to a generation. So while employee value propositions will differ by geography, but depending on the local job markets and the cultural expectations, the traditional employee value propositions are likely to become irrelevant for the future generations, is my take at this point in time. And future talent is looking to mining and metals employers to help them meet their fundamental human needs, right, which can be explained in multiple dimensions. Now, while the emphasis on these dimensions will change, it will differ from geography to culture, but Accenture research found that 64% of a person's potential is influenced by, whether or not, they are better off across these dimensions. So let me tell you, few of these dimensions. Purposeful, which makes a person feel a positive difference to the world, right? What is he or she bringing in, and whether the life has meaning and a greater sense of purpose beyond oneself. The second, which we all relate to very, very closely, is financials. Being financially secure. And I think with this generation of today, they definitely, are very, very focused on making sure that they are absolutely financially secure from day one, without undue economic stress or worry, or having equitable opportunity, and making sure they're secure from a future stability point of view. The third aspect that I want to call out is strong sense of belonging and inclusion, which is the relational aspect or dimension, which will dwell on many strong interpersonal relationships that we create within the ecosystem. The fourth, being marketable, being in demand. Who would not, want to really have those kind of skills where we are employable, we have in-demand capabilities and skills, and of course, as you can see, the market, which is so very, very fluid, people having the right skills, are in demand as they move in their careers. The fifth, again, very, very important in this era, is feeling positive emotions and maintaining your mental wellness is so very important after what we've gone through in the last few years. And of course, the sixth one is being in good physical health, equipped to take on the normal daily stresses of our day-to-day jobs are going to be so very important.
After pandemic, the work-life balance has become extremely important. You don't want them to work. I remember my student, he was in an investment bank, Salomon Brothers in US, and he said he was working 100 hours a week. I suppose that is something which is out. And the other thing that I see with this new generation is that they want to leverage their skills to enhance their earning. That is the other point that I see here, because package here has suddenly become extremely important. And I hear this, there's a raging issue on moonlighting these days. So maybe job security, financial security would start kicking in, would become an important factor. The moment you see work-life balance, etc., then automatically that job security aspect would come in. May not be like a government employee, but that aspect would become extremely important. One more thing that is important is that the job should be consistent with the aspirations of the student or the recruits. So I was talking to the Tata Steel MD, Mr. Narendran, the other day, and we were saying, you hire IIT students in Tata Steel, they work for a couple of years and many of them leave. Now, about job security, I must say in Tata Steel, for example, their whole system is so good and humane that if you stay here for 5 years, you're not going to leave. So he said, now they're seriously thinking that for shop floor, we'll get people with diploma or from other colleges. For better students, we'll have them more in, for example, in analytics, more in jobs which have higher technology requirements. So if that happens, that could be a game changer, especially for the core industries.
Given the sea change in technologies, work culture, talent skilling and employee expectations, etc., what can organizations like mining and metal companies do to unlock the full potential of the workforce?
Accenture research has found that we have 5 practices around these dimensions, which improve the revenue growth by kind of unlocking workforce potential. We talk about enabling continuous learning to ensure that we have a future-ready workforce where employees can see a clear career path and feel supported to kind of develop these new skills to move into the future, wherein earlier it was more of staying with your core primary skills or working on those roles or jobs, which was a conservative way of looking at things. Listening to people on the front lines and empowering them with real-time data from assets and operations is another aspect, that we should be thinking on. Using technologies to enable flexible work arrangements, right? Before the pandemic, it was all hands down, have to be in office. But things have changed, and where we are looking at, having flexible work arrangements rather than static work rosters to better suit the needs of our future workforce, which will also mean enabling a much more diverse workforce. Championing the workforce well-being and equality across the various workforce segments is also extremely key, which has to be enabled by a new leadership thinking and mindset and a change in our DNA around these aspects. And the last point that I want to make here is also, kind of sharing, or first and foremost, setting metrics to be basically having that transparent kind of a relationship, accountable for diversity and equality, and working within the ecosystem partnership for creating that one voice for the future workforce is going to be extremely, extremely important.
So it's about how do we really meet the emotional needs in addition to only the financial needs of the people who are really working at the site, people who are really operating to ensure that mining companies are producing to the target, right? How do we ensure that we impart the learning to people to understand what are the smartest way to do their job? Is there any alternative through which they can perform their job activities better, at the same time being very safe about things, right? How do you democratize the use of technology, make it accessible, give people luxuries as trivial nowadays as BYOD, wherein people are free to bring their own devices. In fact, enable when they ruggedized devices so that they can do their job, and also make technology easy for them to use in the daily life. I'll give it a simple example. If you talk about smartwatches, and if you extend that to saying smart wearables, these are pretty much not even 50-gram devices which have to be worn around your wrist. And what it does is it actually makes workforce safe, that even if I am there in a situation wherein there is a methane leak or there is something which is going wrong around me, I can press the button on my beacon and evacuation will be triggered, right? So how do we really champion the safe, well-being environment, with your workforce is something which is key. And last important point is around how do you give the visible signs of you working responsibly to your stakeholders, including your communities, your own employees, their families, governments, and also the people who are your investors.
You have to fulfill the aspirations of the people who are working with you. If you set up sensor networks, if you set up communication networks, so that every point of everything that is happening inside the mine is available to you on your desk. That would make a tremendous difference. In fact, a number of companies are already doing it. Mining industry, I have a feeling down the line will also function like electricity. You have a separate generation sector, you have a separate transmission and separate distribution. And then down the line, what you will see, they will only own business development and customer services. The network would probably be like what you have the transmission network in electricity. And then the separate tower companies have come in where all the telecom players subscribe to. So, and the billing is done by IBM. So what I expect is that even in mining, there's going to be a sea change. So we already have what are called as management development operators who actually do the mining. So what I see here is we need people with a multidisciplinary expertise to oversee these people. But at the same time, things like a mine plan has to be done by you. If somebody does an exploration, you have to have geologists who can figure out that they have done a good job. Okay. Similarly, mine planning needs people with good mining domain knowledge. So I think both are important. And in fact, our education system now is geared up to that. There is a lot of emphasis that no theory, you have to develop a product. And they are also encouraging when you join with industry and industry puts 20% of the money in a project, okay, then the rest 80% will be funded by the government. So the government has created a field where collaboration with industry is important. Now, industry is also, see, you have talent here. You can get stuff from outside, but the amount of money you will pay would be too much. So now industry is also coming forward and we have several such collaborations. I just wanted to tell you about one interesting change that has taken place in ISM in mining. See, the government of India started a technology innovation hub, which is exploration and mining. So, a technology innovation hub across the country, across IITs, NITs, etc. And we get the TIH in exploration and mining. Now, what has happened is, and now it has been found out as a Section 8 company, we call it Texman Foundation. So we incubate, we give funding to companies to develop technology for mining. And we have to be self-sustainable. So that part is going on. We have to be self-sustainable in a couple of years. So we have come out with a model where Texmin, which is actually a company of IIT ISM Dhanbad, we are collaborating with different industries.
So that then brings us to the all-important question at the heart of this episode. What approach can companies follow to reach, acquire and retain the talent of the future? Chandni and Mithilesh share some insightful views that are now driving the change in the mining sector in India.
I've been with Accenture for the last 20 years, and I have gone exactly through this change where, I've had the opportunity to play multiple roles, which initially were very internal focused. But, when I used to look at some of my role models, talking or facing off with the clients, having those conversations with the confidence that, they brought to the table. Yeah. My aspirations as a young developer in the organization was, how could I reach to those levels? What would it take, from me? And how could Accenture really put me through that rigor to be able to achieve my aspirations? Mm-hmm. And Accenture really helped me put through these various mentorship programs, the leadership development trainings. Of course, the technical trainings go without, saying. So that really put me into a journey or a roadmap which transformed my career to become what I am today as a successful leader, having those tough or frank client conversations. That's the role I play today. Also, in my inclusion and diversity lead role for growth markets, which is the other role I play, the intent is to do just this, right? To coach, to mentor and guide the next generation of leaders and provide them with these opportunities as they go along the way. Mm-hmm. Now, on your second aspect, Sheetal, companies must map these emerging roles. Yeah. They have to develop these employee value propositions, for a broader and more diverse workforce, and, adopt a multi-pronged sourcing approach. So they should look at how do they have to transform their talent. How do they bring up the talent journey for these resources? We have to work towards redesigning this talent and their leadership journeys. As I said, it's absolutely important to be, looking at what really people aspire to do in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. And of course, grow and deploy this talent at an industry level.
My view is companies, of course, you need to have a very cohesive thinking, Sheetal. And this is where I think competitors will start to feel that you need to become collaborators also. So it really requires an ecosystem wherein companies as competitors at the same time, collaborators are coming together. You also have some of the consortia. You also have the government bodies. You have the consulting firms coming together to really develop that employee value proposition for creating mining a very, very diverse and very, very inclusive workforce, right? And the approach is basically on three elements. The one is around how do you really redefine and calibrate the talent journey and ensure that right from sourcing till orientation of people as they join the mining workforce, and at the same time, when you orient them and allocate them job responsibilities, how do you ensure that you really map the talent journey from cradle to grave? That's one part of it. Okay. The second aspect is about how do you really redesign the leadership structure around mining? Because pretty much the thinking also has to change, and it also has to be changed right from your boardrooms. So how do you really redesign and govern and execute that leadership journey and have that mandate to be able to trigger that change? And third element is about how do you deploy talent as an industry-wide level? Because talent crunch is an industry-wide problem. As I said, if the world has to really do as much of mining, it is needed to really fulfill our ambitions of driving electrical vehicles and our ambitions of having everything well lit and our ambitions, each one of us having mobile phones, it has to do a lot of mining when it comes to copper, some of the rare earth minerals and precious metals. This is where I think we'll have to also see how is it that we are repurposing and deploying talent where it really is needed. And I'm very overwhelmed when I reflect back to my 15 years, 3 years as a mechanical engineer, having some understanding about metallurgy. What it has done is it has made me realize the nuances of steel making. Being a mechanical engineer myself, it has ensured that I have that emotional intelligence when I really get to hear the hardships which people working on the sites, working on the mine sites really face, right? It's about having that sense of emotional intelligence so that you can feel the pain. And let me tell you, it's not fun when you really have 2.5 kg self-rescuer on the west side and having that backpack ride. And it really, somebody has to really feel the environment in which you are talking of. So that journey has really helped me, become very emotionally aware. At the same time, this journey has also helped me understand the other part of the story, which is about the people who are working for mining.
We've come to the end of this episode of Inside the Heart of Change on mining and metal companies. And we've gotten some really useful insights from our experts, Chandni Vazirani, Mithilesh Kumar, and Professor Rajeev Shekar. We've learned that transformations brought about by fast-changing modern technologies, by a changing work culture, and the changing aspirations of the people who are and will be the future workforce is leading to a fundamental shift in mining as an industry. As innovations, sustainability, and Gen Z change the face of the industry, we are likely to see a reinvented and reinvigorated industry in the coming years and decades. Thank you for listening.
This is Inside the Heart of Change, brought to you by Accenture.